Europeans have Reddit, what do Americans have every day that you see as a luxury? 24/7 hot water. Lots of older places especially have hot water on timers to limit energy use. Instead of sealed insulated cylinders they use open-air cisterns in the attic. Garages. Closets. Really storage space of any kind. Home hobbies are much rarer for us as there's nowhere to have a workshop. Even Christmas decorations are comparatively rare for one of places to store them. Outlets in the bathroom. Can't dry your hair in there. Handicap accessibility. I required the use of a wheelchair for a few years. During that time, we visited Spain and Italy. It was an absolute nightmare trying to navigate public spaces. My husband made sure that our apartment in Rome had an elevator as it was on the third floor. However, when we arrived, we discovered that there was 2 flights of stairs in order to access the elevator. We managed, but it was a very difficult trip for us. Big kitchens and big refrigerators, freezers. Even in my student apartment we had a pretty good sized kitchen. I was dating a Czech girl and her parents came to visit. When they went to my apartment for a dinner, the mom was just amazed at the size of my fridge. They were amused when I dumped the scraps in the sink and turned on the garbage disposal. They'd heard about it but had never seen one. My European GF asked me one day over Messenger as I was in the US and she was in Europe, why do Americans bother having electric can openers? It seems lazy. I told her to take a pic of her can opener and send it to me. 3 or 4 minutes go by and no pic. She comes back to say she cannot find it at the moment. I then asked her how often she'd lose something the size of an electric one. Money. Americans will swear up and down how poor they are, but they have much higher purchasing power. Whatever they'll want to buy it'll always mean less to them than other people. Of course, in terms of international products like electronics, cars, trips, any luxuries, fandom merch, event tickets etc. I don't mean things like food or rent, which always depend on the location. Difficult to say because Europe is a mix of different countries with different laws, tax rules, cultures, languages, interests etc. However, generally speaking, some personal points. The US has better houses. Beautiful for a decent price. Cars are nice and cheap. I love how sport is integrated into the school system and love American sport in general. Restaurants that stay open between lunch-dinner shifts. When I lived in NZ, restaurants closed 2 p.m. would prep for dinner reopen 5 p.m. It was super inconvenient at first because we were on the road exploring and couldn't always time exactly when we would arrive in a town and need to eat, but otherwise you just adjusted to it and planned accordingly. First, it is interesting how many Americans comment here and how few Europeans. As someone from the most populated country in Europe, the only thing I'd see as in luxury that I don't have, is the sheer amount of space and cheap land. Like what I own and live on is what some in the US use to park their vehicles. American here but strong medications. A pharmacist in Denmark looked at me wide-eyed when I said I have a script for 800 mg prescription ibuprofen in the US. Also, anytime I get cold flu medicine in Europe doesn't seem to be nearly as effective. Spacious hallways, corridors and homes in general. Dedicated laundry rooms, not a washing machine in the kitchen, smiley face, apartment complex pools and the regular washing of the windows of high-rise buildings. It's infrequent in Europe. Their streets are always so wide. But here in Dusseldorf, I know many little streets where I have to vanish into a parking space when I'm on my bike and a car wants to pass, because otherwise, they physically can't. The size of your homes in places like Utah and Texas. There's a dedicated room for everything. Kids' playroom that is in the living room or the kids' bedroom, walk-in pantry room, a laundry room. By themselves, cars, even if a lot of Europeans still have cars. Not a fan of car-centric infrastructure and all that, but I'd still like the freedom to be able to just drive where I have to go. Just driving up to the curb and parking without first circling around the block 10 times and then finally parallel park, barely squeezing between the bumpers of 2 other cars. I'm surprised no one has mentioned a nice shower. Not everywhere in Europe is the same, but far too often showering is a chore instead of a relaxing experience. American here, but I've heard that they don't have garbage disposals in their sinks over there. I use mine every day and can't imagine life without it. I'm the American, but my British friend is envious of the plethora of big-name anime conventions with big guests who are relatively easy to meet. I would give up everything mentioned in this post for healthy, affordable food, liberal work-life balance policy and universal free healthcare. Cheap benzene. Please Americans, stop complaining about a gas price that really is not that expensive if you compare it to here. The massive houses, a special room just for your massive washer and dryer units, 2-car garage, Basically you have tons of space. The houses in America can be huge compared to European spaces, but way more flimsy than European houses. Salaries. Not European, but my friends abroad are all flabbergasted by the salaries here. I want to know why B-days are not commonplace in the US? Bunch of savages over here. The backyards and front yards. The size of the garages. The huge living rooms. The ability to throw away trash, basically anything, and in large quantities. I've heard window screens aren't as common in places like Italy and Greece. Used to be 24-hour stores in restaurants. That went away with COVID. Reading most comments, it seems Australia has the best of both worlds. Proximity to the Caribbean and Latin American, cheaper flights. Fresh air. It's illegal to smoke in restaurants, for example. No wars in North America. But America at war everywhere.